When business partners disagree, I had a great call today with a person who was wanting to write a book and really was just kind of getting to the part in their business journey with I'm not gonna try to get too specifics on it. I don't want to embarrass anybody, but I'm sure they wouldn't mind me sharing their stuff. But I didn't get any permission, so I'm gonna change some of the details. But we'll just say that they were in the services business, and they're kind of getting to the end of their journey in business, and they're wanting to write a book, and they were reaching out to me because I've been doing some classes on that. Which, but if you are interested in learning how to write a book, I have a free introductory course. Just go to the link in the description, and you can get your hot hands on that. Anyway, they were telling me that they were kind of done with being in the business because they and their partner just haven't gotten along, and they haven't been getting along for a while. And this is it's not that uncommon when I see business owners who are not getting along. Many times, and let me just say that there is healthy conflict and there's unhealthy conflict. The healthy conflict, I mean, let's face it, not all conflict should be avoided. Some conflict can be healthy, and in fact, many times growth comes from conflict if the conflict is healthy, if the conflict is based in and around trust, and in an environment of trust. It's when the conflict is conflictual. It's when the conflict is born out of distrust, and it's when the conflict becomes toxic. That's when it becomes a real problem, especially if there's employees involved. And many times, and this is very, very true in family businesses that I see, where you get this fracturing of usually what ends up happening is it's the parents, and then it's almost always the kids that are fighting. Almost always, not always, but almost always. And the parents are caught in the middle because they have been enabling one, and one is usually working their tail off. The other one is not doing much, but they're still getting an equal share. And that's usually what I see. And those things can be really tricky to navigate just because there's such a family dynamic that goes on with this. But the thing is, usually if it's not a family dynamic issue, a lot of times it's usually, let's just say it's two partners, sometimes three partners. If there's two partners, two business partners, it's sometimes where it's one person putting up the money and the other person is putting up the sweat equity. And usually it's the person who is doing all the sweat equity that sooner than later starts to feel pretty salty about all the work that they're doing. And they're like, well, what's this other person doing? Well, they put in the money, so they don't feel like they have to do anything. And yeah, these are all different situations that I've heard. So how do you navigate that? Well, of course, every situation is different and every dynamic is different. But I will tell you this, that you can't even begin to have a conversation unless you feel that you can trust the other person. If you honestly feel that you cannot trust them, and there's 7 different dimensions of trust, right? So they're not levels, but they're just dimensions. Like there's competence trust. Do you believe that they have competence and that they know their job? Do you trust their character? Do you believe that they are of sound character and will make the right decisions, the right moral decisions, right? The decisions that are in alignment with core values. We're going to come back to core values in a second. Do you trust their confidence? Do you think that they're confident in what they can do? Do they care? Is there caring trust? Do you feel that they actually care as much as you do? Right. So those are some elements there. There's consistency trust, there's commitment trust, there's communication trust, and all these different elements of trust are really important. And if any one of those areas is lacking, they won't trust you and you won't ever know why. And that's a big deal. So when you're thinking about these different aspects of trust, you have to kind of look through that lens and say, how much do I trust this person? So if you're having a disagreement with your business partner and you're thinking, okay, well, I'm not really sure how much that I trust them, you may need someone else involved as like an arbitrator, like an individual that that knows how to find common ground and help you guys navigate this, because you may not be able to do it, especially if you're operating from a low trust environment. And what I mean by a low trust environment is, you know, have you ever been in a place where you don't really want to say much because anything that you say can and will be used against you, right? Well, that can stink, man. So you just try to keep your answers like super shallow, like, how's it going? Oh, it's going great. It's going great, right? How's it going? Oh, nothing new. Nope, nope, nothing's new. Nope, no, absolutely nothing, right? You keep your answers super superficial, very shallow conversations, because that's what's safe, because you don't want anything being used against you. And that's a very indicative of there being a low trust environment. But when there's high trust, there's a high trust environment, you're given the benefit of the doubt. It's not like, well, why did you say the when you said this, right? You're not being picked apart on every little word. So we see that in politics a lot. So that operating from a low trust environment, you can't possibly hope to change much if there's no trust. So assuming you can get to trust, then you just need to start to consider, okay, let's say that we're not operating from a low trust or a low trust or no trust environment. There is some trust, but there's maybe some misalignment of core values, or that the core values have maybe shifted, or that you think that maybe your core values have changed a little bit, and because the business's core values are just an extension of you, the business owner. If the business's core values have not been defined, which in many businesses that I go into and many businesses that I've worked for, the core values were not really clearly defined. And as a result, the company culture was kind of a mess. And if the core values are not defined and there's not a strong company culture, the company culture is going to be defined by the strongest personality in the room. That's just the nature of how that works. So if the core values are not defined, then there may not be alignment because they're not defined. So that's generally a place to start, to say, well, where when I work with creating a personal vision for a married couple, and I'm working with them on that. Now, I can't create it for them, but they do have to start with a set of shared core values, because if their core values are not in alignment, having a shared vision is not going to work, because the core values are off. So, especially this is why it's so important to define those core values. So that last piece is, again, we're talking about the difference between business core values and personal core values. Those things are, it should start with personal, because that's what helps define the business core values. Now let's talk about a shared vision. A shared vision is absolutely critical. And I'm saying shared vision because a leader of an organization needs to have a vision. But if I'm telling you what the vision of the organization is, and I've never asked you for your input, I've never asked for your advice, and you and I are equal partners, and this has all been about my vision, how hard are you going to want to work for my vision? It doesn't, eventually there might be a disconnect. And even if you're only 1 degree off, over time, you're going to wind up, someone's going to wind up over the horizon where you can't see each other anymore. So I've always said this, that people are much more inclined to carry a ball that they helped inflate. So how can you enroll them, enlist them, and conjoin with them to make sure that there's a shared vision? And I know some of this, if you're watching this, you might be thinking, well, why would this matter? Well, when you have a shared vision among your tribe, when you have a shared vision among your people, now you've got people who are coming in and staying late because they know the mission. They know the shared vision. They know that a piece of their vision is also getting included in this vision. So if you can help them get what they want, of course they're going to help you get what you want, right? Zig Ziglar said that. So I think it's really important to have a shared vision. Now, it's a little bit too complex and too deep to do that in a 5-minute video, but the point here is that if you don't have trust, if you don't have aligned values, core values, if you don't have a shared vision, or if that hasn't been reviewed in a while, yes, then at business partners, they're going to become more and more fractured. They're going to become more and more distant. And unfortunately, if that isn't addressed, if those three things aren't addressed, then the business partnership can completely fall apart. And keep in mind too, is that, people evolve over time. So something they valued several years ago, they may no longer value. Something that was in their vision several years ago may not be in their vision today. So it's not bad if these things evolve, but you do need to communicate about it. And if someone needs to exit, okay, great. Then let's talk about that. Let's see what that needs to look like. Now, I'm going to land the plane here, but one of the things that I would suggest is if you are in a situation where you are in a bad situation with a business partner, get someone get a third party that comes in. I have done stuff like this and have worked with business partners. I'm not an arbitrator by training, but I have helped people navigate those conversations for sure. And sometimes they don't end up so well, but they end up the best they could just because they have let this thing metastasize for so long that it becomes something that's truly ugly. So the best thing to do is to get in front of this as soon as you possibly can. And sometimes having a third party in the room is it just makes those conversations a little bit easier. So the emotions can be kept in check. But the main thing is do not poison the well. Don't poison the well with snide comments or sarcasm or anything like that with employees or anybody else that's in the business, because that is just destroying any shred of trust that's remaining. So if you are engaging in something like that with a business partner and you're thinking like, oh my gosh, like how am I going to get out of this situation? And you're frustrated and everything else, go tell a best friend that has nothing to do with the business, right? Go tell a priest, go tell somebody that has no skin in the game, because the minute you start talking about this stuff to your employees, you're poisoning the well, and that is not going to end. That is not going to end well. All right. That's all I have today. And if you'd like access to that free book writing and publishing course, go ahead and click on the link. And that's all I have. See you guys next time.